Ling Han's first strike was decisive, his body brimming with a torrent of lethal intent, knowing that in such a crowded place with elites from all tiers, anyone from the Heaven tier or Shattering Void tier might appear to strike at any moment. The only solution was to end it swiftly and without hesitation. To kill a teacher of the academy was a heinous crime. Yet Ling Han, with his iron-willed temperament, had no qualms about it. His mantra: kill first, speak later. The air split with a blazing roar as sword rays exploded from his blade, their fiery streaks cleaving through the air like a burning star. Though the Revere Life Sword could not fully unleash its potential, Ling Han's strength was enough to channel the terrifying might of the Deity Transformation tier. The sword manifested a cruel and unyielding killing array, spiraling towards Mao Jun and his companion. "This is no ordinary sword ray," Mao Jun gasped. A sword array? The pair were struck with dread. How could this be? The single sword in Ling Han's hand was able to conjure a sword ray that transformed into a deadly killing array, seeking its enemies with unfathomable malice. Their hearts seized with fear, and in a blind panic, their only thought was to flee. In truth, the killing array was a force to be reckoned with. It had once aimed to destroy Ling Han, but he had countered its destructive nature with the gentleness of his comprehension. This was the very sword that had eluded him for so long, a treasure not just to be wielded, but conquered. Yet, though he possessed it, the sword had not fully yielded to him. There was a gulf between merely claiming it and mastering it. Once the killing array was unleashed, it fought alongside him, and it was potent enough to bring down even a high-level deity transformation tier cultivator. The power was immense, unparalleled. In mere moments, Mao Jun and his ally were both badly wounded, their bodies drenched in blood. The onlookers could only stare in awe. To face a warrior from a higher cultivation tier with such ferocity was madness, and yet here Ling Han was, cutting through them like an unstoppable force. What would happen if he ever reached the Heaven tier? Would he not rival the world's greatest powers? "Brother Mao, we must unleash our ultimate techniques together," Qi Li Guo urged, his voice tinged with desperation. "If we can endure a few more strikes, reinforcements will arrive." Agreed. Mao Jun's expression grew stern, his focus narrowing. In a moment, lightning danced around his body, his eyes glowing with a fierce, electric light. To launch a major move, two paths existed. One could slowly gather power, allowing it to build to an overwhelming crescendo, but this would take time. Alternatively, one could force the technique out in an instant, sacrificing one's own vitality to release it. Most would take the slower route, biding their time and accumulating strength to unleash a decisive blow. But in this battle, Mao Jun had no luxury of time. Each exchange left him bleeding, each second a battle for survival, forcing him to accelerate his attack by drawing from his own life force. With a violent crash, his body surged into a giant form, nearly 30 meters tall, crackling with lightning. He swung his palm downwards towards Ling Han with unimaginable force. This was not the thunderclap ninth heaven, yet the destructive power was no less immense. The entire area was swept by thunder, its terrifying power making the very earth tremble. But Qi Li Guo had other plans. As Mao Jun was preparing to deal the killing blow, Qi Li Guo, under the guise of joining the attack, had already fled. Mao Jun was stunned, his rage boiling over. "Qi Li Guo, you treacherous?" Ling Han sneered coldly. With his Revere Life Sword stashed in the Black Tower, he unsheathed the Sunset Bow. Knocking an arrow forged from precious metal, three mystical powers converged, locking onto Qi Li Guo's retreating figure. Mao Jun silently observed, helpless to intervene. A single arrow whizzed through the air, sharp as a dragon's fang. Qi Li Guo, thinking he was safe, had let down his guard. In that moment of relaxation, the arrow struck with deadly accuracy, piercing his heart. The arrow carried the terrifying power of the thunderclap ninth heaven, shredding through Qi Li Guo's defenses as if they were mere paper. The impact drove him forward, stumbling, as his life drained away. "Qi Li Guo!" Mao Jun screamed in disbelief, his voice a mix of fury and helplessness. Qi Li Guo collapsed, his blood staining the ground, his last thoughts filled with regret. If he had stayed and fought, joining Mao Jun in a united effort, they might have had a chance. But now his cowardice had sealed his doom. Ling Han, without hesitation, retrieved the precious arrow and turned to pursue Mao Jun, his body surging like lightning. His speed exceeded Mao Jun's, the gap between them shrinking with every passing second. The chase was relentless. Zhu Xuan'er, Hu Niu, and Rabbit followed close behind. Mao Jun's mind raced in terror. There was only one thought left: escape. The youth pursuing him was a nightmare he could not outrun. Suddenly, before him appeared a slender figure, ordinary at first glance, but when their gaze met, the universe seemed to expand within their eyes. Shu Shu ran. From the absolute saber sect, a glimmer of hope surged within Mao Jun. Martial nephew Shu, save me! He cried, desperate, but Shu Shu ran was unflinching. He raised his hand and cautioned, be careful. Mao Jun could not fathom the warning. Before he could respond, a sword passed through his chest, the killing intent so fierce that his very soul was obliterated. His body crumpled lifelessly to the ground. Ling Han, with cold disdain, retrieved the sword, casting a final glance at Shu Shu Ran, who stood motionless, his expression unreadable. I have no qualms about eliminating your geniuses from the absolute saber sect, Ling Han muttered. Each one is a barrier to my future. Shu Shu Ran's gaze grew grave. That was Mao Jun of the Azure Thunder sect, he remarked. So? Ling Han replied coldly. I've already slain Small Saber King. Now Mao Jun, what of it? Shu Shu Ran's face tightened. Does this mean you intend to oppose the Restore Heaven Academy? Ling Han smiled darkly. There's still one more, Qi Li Guo, and he too is dead. Shu Shu Ran's face remained impassive. That one was from Heaven's Sword sect. Ling Han's voice was filled with ice. If you wish to oppose me, Shu Shu Ran, you'll find I'm already far beyond the reach of your sect. So, you claim I shall meet my end? Ling Han's voice was indifferent, his gaze calm, as though the weight of life and death bore no meaning to him. Shu Shu Ran nodded, his expression unshaken. You are already as dead as a man can be. What remains is but a corpse that still breathes. The 5 great sects, rulers of the realm for millennia, wielded their power with the certainty of a mountain unshaken by storms. In an era where the likes of the shattering void tier were so numerous they flooded the realm, how could a mere spiritual infant tier brat hope to survive their wrath? Even if Ling Han had ascended to the shattering void tier, it was little more than a flash of brilliance in the shadow of countless experts. Hundreds of shattering void tier warriors could descend upon him. And even his defiance of the natural order would not save him from the inevitable death awaiting him. Among the shattering void tier, how many could truly shatter the void and ascend to immortality? Each was a prodigy of his time, a towering figure in the world. How could one so easily surpass them, let alone bring them to their knees? Ling Han laughed, a sound devoid of fear. Then let this corpse be the one to destroy you first. Shu Shu Ran's eyes gleamed, a flash of pride crossing his features. With a swift motion, he unsheathed the absolute saber. I've had a breakthrough. My understanding of the saber has reached new heights. The absolute saber's power has doubled. Tell me, what do you have to counter it? His voice was filled with arrogance. He had seen the demon birth sword before, but now that the absolute saber had surpassed it, victory was certain. Ling Han smiled faintly, undeterred. Oh, we shall see. Without fear, he revealed no weapon yet, for his true strength lay in his heart, not in any single tool. If need be, he could always call upon the Black Tower. Shu Shu Ran said nothing more. His aura surged, saber chi swirling around him like a tempest, coalescing into a spectral heavenly saber behind him. The saber exuded the aura of a heaven tier weapon, an unnatural force for a mere deity transformation tier cultivator. Such was the prowess of a genius who could challenge opponents far beyond his own level. The heavenly saber slashed downward with thunderous force, a 300-meter arc of devastating power that threatened to obliterate everything in its path. Ling Han's response was swift and decisive. He raised his fists, his body coiling with power. He did not dare underestimate his opponent, for Shu Shu Ran was a genius who could defy the heavens. His punch, although not his preferred style, was filled with full might. As the saber descended, a sword ray, an extension of his will, flashed forward to meet it. But despite its brilliance, the sword ray was instantly crushed beneath the saber's overwhelming force. The impact caused Ling Han's arm to tremble as though it were made of soft dough. The force distorted his arm grotesquely, stretching it out like an umbrella, his body sent flying back over 20 meters. A wound opened on his hand, veins bursting, and his entire arm turned red from the force. Yet, This was the extent of the damage. Su Ran's eyes widened in shock. Merging strength and gentleness? He muttered, his brows furrowed in confusion. Even the most refined body arts couldn't endure such an attack, yet Ling Han's body had resisted. Ling Han shook his arm, and as the indestructible heaven scroll surged within him, his body of diamond activated, healing the injury in a heartbeat. His skin became as smooth as jade, the wound vanishing without a trace. Shu Ran remained calm, keeping his absolute saber in a vertical stance. Though he was confident in his victory, he knew the true danger Ling Han posed. Such a monster could not be allowed to survive. He had to be eradicated now. The absolute saber glowed with a faint light, though damaged. It was still brimming with terrifying energy. The saber hummed with an almost sentient will, its chi radiating outwards like a living beast, making Shu Ran feel the weight of its immense power. Ling Han, undeterred, drew the Revere life sword. It, too, seemed to sense the impending battle, its blade marking with ominous energy, encircling itself in a deadly aura. The air thickened with anticipation, and in a flash, the absolute saber surged towards Ling Han. The Revere life sword followed suit, its patterns glowing with restrained but deadly power. The two weapons met with a deafening clash, the shockwave ripping through the earth and causing the sky to tremble. The sun itself seemed to pale in comparison to the collision of these two supreme treasures. For a moment, the world was divided. One side bathed in the darkness of the absolute saber, the other in the blinding light of the Revere life sword. The two forces were opposites, destined to oppose each other. Shu Ran's expression shifted. He had never expected that the absolute saber would not dominate the Revere life sword. It was impossible. The absolute saber was the weapon of an ancient god, its power unmatched in the world. Even its damage should have been inconsequential in comparison to any other weapon. Ling Han's lips curled into a smile, his voice light and mocking. It seems our spirit tools are not so easily wielded, are they? He stood unfazed as the two weapons continued to battle independently, their will stronger than that of their wielders. Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword, the weapon of legends. Come, let us continue the fight. Shu Ran's face twitched in frustration. To think that Ling Han had yet another level 10 spirit tool. He could not help but curse inwardly, his pride wounded. It seemed that Ling Han's treasures were endless. But Shu Ran was not one to shy away from a challenge. With a fierce resolve, he prepared to engage with his bare hands. After all, the absolute saber was not merely a tool, it was an extension of his will, and he would triumph by his own strength.